sense of frustration. And I think that people don't talk about being frustrated or angry as a parent enough, and that you have to articulate that and actually be. I like real talk where when I talk to a parent, where I'm not just hearing about how wonderful your child is, or, all the amazing things that your child has done. I appreciate that. But I also like to have that safe space where I can say, I do not like my child right now. And we have had this conversation, Nikki, but for me, I think you have to acknowledge that in that, going back to that quote, that in that space of trying to check this box and check that box, that you will be frustrated, you will be angry, and you are very that it is very fair. It's very, it's okay for you to have these feelings, and you just have to kind of create outlets for that. Because, in fact, I'm suspect of a parent that is too happy all the time, to be honest with you.
Oh, yeah. You're a liar. You're a liar.
Yes, I appreciate a good, a good kind of gathering of, us just talking, about our kids and being critical and being angry and just laughing and being angry at the same time. So I think it's important to acknowledge that kind of paradoxical kind of cycle and just creating outlets for anger as a parent too.
I remember when I was pregnant, I have a colleague here, and she has twin boys. They are fully grown adults, and they are like wildly successful. Like, she's done an amazing job. But she was a single mom of twins, and her kids would have been in high school when I was pregnant, and I remember she was the only person that came to me. Everybody was like, "Oh my God, congratulations!" Blah, 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 all like that stuff. And is it a girl? And all of that, like, wonderful stuff. And it's going to be so amazing, and all of that. And I remember, it solidified our friendship after this. She came to me and she was like, "Listen, congratulations. And like, when you feel like you want to scream, when you feel like you want to cry, when you feel like, no, this shit is not so great, I am the person to call. Like, I will be happy to hear that from you. I don't need, you don't need to be the happy mom for me. Like, it is not easy, and it's not all like sunshine and rainbows." And I remember like, oh my God, this feels so affirming. Like I get to say, like, I'm tired of my feet being swollen. Like, even that, or like, I'm tired of that. And it's so validating for me. And I think that's why I've been able to like become really close to you two. And again, some of the other women I want to kind of give virtual shout outs to that are sharing in this time in our lives together, is because I feel like we are able to be that real. Like, let me tell you what this little person did and why we are not friends right now. Right. Or like, I don't know what to do with this little person. I've tried this, and this, and they still wilding out. What do I do? Like, there's such a realness in how we connect and talk about our experiences as working mothers that I value and so deeply appreciate.
Yeah, same.
Likewise, and I also wanted to say that, thank you, Ayanna, for bringing up the piece about anger, because yes, I feel like you and I have had this conversation too, Nikki, where it's like sometimes I just need to be pissed off, because all of these men, and I get frustrated, and there's traffic, and and the schedules are so tight, and we have to be everywhere and do everything. It seems never ending. But the other piece I was connecting with that quote is that, we have limits on our time, right? And obviously, I'm not, I can't relate to being a single mother. I have a partner who is an incredible help in all of it. But our time is still limited, right? Mm-hmm. So like you were saying, Nikki, we're not, we can't come home and keep working on that paper. Once we're home, it's a different shift, right? Mm-hmm. It's something else. And even if we tried, and I know we've all tried, right, to come home and say, okay, let me just get another 30 minutes of writing, right? But little person is going to sit right there in your lap in front of the computer, right?
And ask questions. What you doing? What does this say?
And I always remember, like, I always tell the story of, when when Ollie was a baby, when everybody says, oh, you know, people say sleep when the baby sleeps, and people used to tell me right when the baby sleeps, you know, and but it never worked because one, I was exhausted, and then once he got old enough where he was sleeping more regularly, he woke up as soon as I woke up. So I would wake up, I would say, okay, I got you. You wake up at this time, I'm waking up an hour early. I wake up an hour early. He would wake up an hour early with me, and he would crawl into my lap, you know, and that's where he would stay. And so, you know, we've gotten to this point now. I think our children, you know, are older now, and we've learned these lessons before. So, you know, we know that we can't come home and do these things. We know that we're going to be tired. We know that it's just going to be worse. But it is really this catch-22, right, where we live in a society that expects us to produce and we work in an environment that expects us to produce at an astronomical rate, and if there's absolutely no support for families, absolutely no support. And we just have to, in no support in terms of financially, as you were saying, Ayanna, but also in terms of understanding time, the way the workday is structured, et cetera. And, you know, you would think that academia, which is filled with people that have potentially been researching these kinds of things, would be a more understanding space, but it ends up actually being a much more violent space in many ways, because academia tends to see itself outside of the normative business world, and it's really not.
No, it's not. It's not, and it's full of a lot of mistruths, right? Like, we're going to present this one thing, but the actual experience, the actual process is not this thing that we say that we are. And that is a little bit more dizzying, I think. So we got about 5 minutes left, ladies. And I just wanted to, like, you know, I'm always interested to hear, like, if I call it the magic wand question, right? So if we can have policy change or social change, or if there's one thing you wish people knew about, like, your experience as a single mom, I'm not a single mom, a working mom, what would that be? What do you wish were different, that would make your experience as a working mother better, easier, more enjoyable, more engaging, whatever word you would use?
I have a lot. I have a lot of policies I want to propose, a lot of things that need to change. I mean, we need financial support for childcare. That's one. You know, it's a crime how much childcare places are allowed to charge, and there's no limits or bounds on that. But for me, the number one is, you know, would be just a shorter work day. Because I think that there's a lot of people out there that would propose actually longer school days. I've heard that argument a lot. So that we could meet this gap that you were talking about, Nikki, where, we get out of work at 5, our kids get out at 3, so we need them to be in school longer. Whereas, you know, my argument would be we need to not be working to be with our children longer. You know, and so we live in a culture that doesn't value human connection at all, and family connection especially. And so we're forced to have our children raised by either strangers or institutions because we have to work. And so for me, it would be that. And I know it's ideal because it's cultural, right? It's so ingrained in the pace of our culture and productivity and capitalism, et cetera. But that's what I would do.
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot too. I think we have, you know, after having, a little person of 5 years, 6 years old, you have all these ideas on how to impact change and rethink, systems. You start thinking about it in a practical way. I agree. I think that universal child care is really important. And, just going back to the financial piece, I think Well, I really like that idea of first. I like the idea of shifting, not necessarily the school, but thinking about the work, and that feels really good. I also feel like the stress of paying for childcare from when they're a baby until they're 4 years old would be very liberating as a parent, and it would shift your relationship with your child. And if we didn't have to pay that, so I feel like making that free of charge would just really lighten the load for so many parents and working moms. And
you know what I did?
I think. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I do want to come back to you, but this issue of the cost of child care is so critical. That I wanted to do my homework on it a little bit, because I know what my experience was in paying for childcare. And Ayanna, you and I have talked about, like, we're still kind of in financial recovery mode from the childcare. So there was an article in Forbes in 2016 that said that in every state except for one, and the one that it doesn't apply to, there's some interesting caveats how they've worked around that, but in every state, the cost of childcare is always almost 35% or more of a parent's median income, right? Like that, it is literally unaffordable for almost every state that exists, and the only state that was the exception was the state of Louisiana, but that's because they have some interesting tax credits that they've done on a state level. So it's not necessarily that it makes it more cost effective, is that it's offset in some ways. The average infant in center-based childcare can be as high as $17,000 a year, and then as they get older, can range up to $12,000, almost $13,000 a year, right?
Yeah.
So that piece is like extremely real, and the other part that you talked about, Ayanna, in terms of the indirect piece, right? So like, not only am I financially strained, but now that impacts my mental well-being, which impacts my capacity to be present and care for my child in the time that I am with him or her.
Yeah, I always reference the time I'm thankful that I had my grandmother to watch the from when he was 2 months old until he was 2 years old. And I still paid her, but it was not as much as I had to pay if he were in daycare. But I didn't expect that part, and I joke about it, but to some extent it is true. I call it post-traumatic stress, period of dealing with, the finance of that, and just kind of even like looking for the right child care place and making sure that I felt safe and comfortable with this place, and just adapting to, this whole new world, and so I think that there's so much trauma and stress in that zone and that time from birth until 4 years old. And when parents get to the, that period of pre-K, where I was surprised that I actually had to still pay come pre-K. So I'll just say when we get to kindergarten,
when you get to kindergarten,
you let out this huge sigh, like I made it, I did it, like it changes you're just in a very different zone,
Yeah.
And we don't have paid medical leave, maternity leave.
Right.
And so, people have to start that process sometimes from week 1 of birth. So, for us, it was, we actually sat down, my husband and I, and decided, because he wasn't working at the time, and decided that it was actually better for us financially for him to just not work and stay home and take care of our kids rather than get a job. Like we would actually be making more money that way.
Right.
We'd be losing more.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ladies.
Yeah.
Can I invite you all to move up to New York State?
No.
We have
you'd be homeless.
Not New York City. Not New York City. You would be homeless in New York City. Let's not play a game about that. Unless we all want to move into my 2-bedroom apartment, we can make some things happen. Right? But I'll invite you to move to New York State, because we actually have, as of January of this year, paid family leave for both for both parents, regardless of gender, or any parent, regardless of gender, because New York State has taken the stance that the place of a parent should be with their child upon birth.
Yes.
So
and it should.
let's hope that rolls out into other states.